Hello, and welcome back to 50 States, 50 Murders, the podcast taking you, the listener, on an auditory road trip across all 50 states while we discuss 50 different murders. Thank you all for tuning in to episode 18. Dakota, can you let us know where we're going to be traveling to today?
We're going to be traveling to Pensacola, Florida to look at the murder of the Smith family.
Okay, before jumping in, wanted to really just take a quick second to apologize for our absence. We've been, I guess you could say, out of office for the last few weeks. So thanks everyone for following along and being patient with us. Dakota, I feel like August is just a pretty hectic time for us. I know that you celebrated a birthday over the month, so happy birthday to you. Happy belated. Um Hopefully 32 is going well for you thus far.
No, not
How
really.
No, not really. Oh, well, that's a bummer. I know that you have a bit of a new schedule at work, which has kind of been making this a little bit more tricky, but we're doing our best to make this work. And I took a quick trip to West Virginia a few weeks back, and I'm getting ready to head out to Colorado next week. So it's not on just one of us. It's been pretty hectic for both of us. But we did have Labor Day. How was your Labor Day? Did you do anything special, anything cool, or just chilled out?
I just chilled out, spent time with Michaela.
Okay.
I took her over to my parents. I thought we were going to hang out on, hang out and eat some dinner, but they left me after like an hour to go
Okay,
run some
cool.
errands. So
Nice.
I just went home and ate dinner alone.
All right, awesome. That sounds like a pretty cool Labor Day. All right. Well, anyways, like we said, apologies for the long break. I may or may not be out next week, but we're gonna try to figure out a mini episode regardless to drop some content your way. But now that we are back, let's go ahead and jump back to our regularly scheduled program and get back to our fictitious road trip across all 50 states. This week's recommendation comes from Kimmy at Kimmy ENP on TikTok. Kimmy asked us to cover her home state of Florida. So a big thank you to Kimmy for this week's recommendation, and as well as a continued thank you to all of our listeners for the continued support. If you have not already, be sure to follow us on TikTok where you can suggest cases, states, ask us questions, or drop a comment. This week, we're going to be departing from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and heading to Pensacola, Florida. Sioux Falls to Pensacola, Florida is quite a hike. It's an 18-hour, 1,200-mile drive. And as you mentioned, Dakota, this week we're going to be discussing the case of the Smiths. As we always do before jumping into this week's case, let's take a moment to learn a little bit more about the state we are visiting, as well as some notorious murderers from the state of Florida. Florida is nicknamed the Sunshine State. I would have to say, thus far, out of all the nicknames that we've covered, I think the Sunshine State has to be one of my favorite nicknames. It's clean, it's simple, and it's to the point. It's a state that's very hot. It is very sunny, and chances are you are going to get sunburnt. Dakota, you're notorious for sunburns. So I feel like if you ever head to Florida, make sure you lather up. High SPF.
Yeah, last time my family took a trip down there, I was probably one or two, and my sister got sun poisoning and ended up in the hospital.
Okay. All right. Hey, that's the Sunshine State. I was going to ask, I know you have family down there, so you've only been there once and it was too young to remember then.
Yeah, don't remember it.
Okay. All right. Do you ever plan on making your way down there in the future potentially?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I'm
All
sure
right.
you'll cover some of the reasons why.
Sure, absolutely. So I was actually able to check Florida off my list earlier this year. My wife and I went to Florida for my birthday during spring break, and we stayed at this little low key spot, Indian Rocks, Florida. Pretty chill, and I enjoyed it for the most part. It wasn't a long stay, but it was a good stay, so I'll take it. Dakota, as we scroll down through the dock, we have our state flag and the state seal. If you remember Alabama's state flag, I feel like Florida basically just ripped Alabama's state flag, but then they threw their state seal on top of it. As always, I kind of want to get your opinion on the state flag. What are we thinking this week? What's your take?
Yeah, I thought it looked familiar. I like this one more than Alabama. The seal's nice. It's pretty cool,
Yeah, it's
more
all right.
unique.
See, I'm actually gonna dock them on this one. I don't like that they took someone else's and they just slapped their seal on top of it. I feel like they're copping a little too hard on this one, but I mean, it's all right, I guess. We'll throw it on the TikTok so you guys can see it. But for those who aren't checking it out, we have a white flag with a red X, and then the state seal on top of it. They do have a really cool state seal though, so that's cool. We'll give them that. This was surprising to me. This might be the most surprising murder per capita thus far. I expected another top 10 this week, but Florida actually ranks 23rd in murder per capita with 7.4 per 100K people. Lake City, Florida does rank as the most dangerous city in the state. They have a violent crime rate of 1,547 people per 100K. But just looking at that NPC for Florida, does that number surprise you? 23rd?
Yeah, it does. I can see why it is low because I'm sure there's a lot of people there. Um,
True.
that's probably why.
All right. And for those at home who just sucked at social studies, I feel like everyone knows where Florida's at. But in case you don't, geographic location, Florida is a peninsula in the southeast region, and it's the second most southern state in America. Do you know what the most southern state is in America? A little trivia for you.
Oh, Southern State,
Yep,
Texas.
it is not. It's actually Hawaii.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I
All
know
right,
that much.
little travel for you there. A little trivia travel for you. So yeah, it's Panhandle Peninsula at the bottom of the map below Georgia and Alabama, and it's surrounded by both the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico. How about some interesting facts about the state of Florida? So, in the Miami, Florida, Key West area, they are number one in America as far as the highest average temperature year round in the United States. This area averages 78.7 degrees year round, and they get 343.5 hours of sunshine per month, legitimizing the nickname Sunshine State. And at Four Corners, Florida, a city southwest of Orlando, this is known as the lightning capital of the USA. Because if you're a hockey guy, you'd know that it's the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm assuming that this is where it comes from. This city was found to have the highest lightning strike density of anywhere in the country. Four Corners has a total of 474 lightning strikes per square kilometer. And lastly, here on the subject of Florida and weather, highest year round temps as well as lightning strikes, Florida has to deal with its fair share of hurricanes, thus the Miami Hurricanes. From 1851 to 2018, Florida ranked number one in hurricanes, hit with 120. They are double number two state in America, which is Texas, who had 64. Florida has had more since 2018, obviously. And more recently, they are just dealing with the hurricane from a few weeks ago. I believe Hurricane Idalia, but very low death toll, thankfully, as people heeded the evacuation notice. Did you pay attention to this storm at all?
No, I just knew it was in Florida.
Okay, so I did see like I saw a clip that they were basically saying like you guys need to get out of here. We're not going to be here to save you if you don't. But they were actually telling people who didn't leave to take a Sharpie marker and to write their name, first and last name, so that they can identify you when you die. So
Oh, wow.
I think maybe that kind of like struck a tone. People are like, okay, we probably should get out of here. But this always makes me wonder. It's easy for us as people who live in Ohio, but Dakota, if you lived in a southern state, let's pretend you did live in Florida. You have your home, your pets, all your possessions. Are you riding it out or are you evacuating?
I think it would depend on the category of the storm and how close I am to it.
Bro, I think
Shit,
I'm
I don't
riding.
know.
I think I'm riding it out.
Probably, yeah, because I mean that's my whole life there,
I'm not
paying
leaving.
on that house. So
If the house goes, I go. That's just I don't know. I don't know. I'm not leaving, bro. I'm staying put.
I'm not fucking leaving.
Exactly. All right. So, how about some top places to see in the state of Florida? If you're ever going to head to Florida, what are some notable things to do? Well, obviously, first thing, it has to be Walt Disney World. right? I mean, I'll be honest with you, Dakota, it's not really on my personal list per se. I'm not a huge fan of standing in lines. As we mentioned, it's a sunshine state, so not only are you standing in line, but you're probably gonna be getting sunburned. But with all things aside, I'm sure Walt Disney World is a pretty cool experience, especially if you have children, which neither of us do. But I believe your family in Florida, don't they? Aren't they associated with Walt Disney World somehow? They work there or have some kind of ties to it.
Yeah, a bunch of them did work there. As of last year, there was still someone working there. I don't know who, maybe it was like Ian or something that was able to get people in for free. That's the only way I would really go. But yeah,
Oh, well, yeah, that changes everything. If I got the plug, I can get in for free. I mean, yeah,
yeah, them
for
tickets are
sure.
expensive.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so as far as the park itself, it's not something that you necessarily have an interest in either. But I mean,
No, I do. I definitely do.
okay.
It
Yeah,
just
now
depends on if I got the plug.
if you go to basically any Google site as far as Florida attractions, I mean, every single site is going to have this park as the number
Yeah,
one
of course.
attraction in Florida. So, I mean, regardless whether I want to or not, it has to be here. All right, number two. I just threw down South Beach slash Miami, city of Miami. For my quick spring break trip, unfortunately, I didn't get to make any of these places that I have listed. But if I were to make it back to Miami or Florida in the future, I definitely would like to check out South Beach myself. And I'm not sure if how I envision it is how it really is, because I guess I'm kind of thinking like maybe it's because of Vice City, maybe it's because of Miami Vice, the show. I don't know, but I'm just kind of like thinking it's stuck in the 80s for some reason, and there's like, um, pink and green fluorescent lights, and just the music, the culture. But to get a Cuban sandwich and the nightlife and the beach during the daytime. Like the cool cars, Lamborghinis and all that stuff. It's probably not like that in real life, but that's how I have it in my head. So, uh, Miami, South Beach, I think that'd be a really awesome place to check out, even if you just go down there for like a couple beach days. I don't know. What's your take on Miami? Not talking sports here. We're just talking about
Uh, I don't
just
think Miami is for me. I don't know. I do think the same. I think it's probably the same as like shows, movies, all that. But
yeah.
yeah, that doesn't really pique my interest. I'm sure it'd be cool. It's a huge bucket list item for a lot of people, but yeah, I don't think I'd fit in there.
Yeah, I think you might be a little bit too fair skinned for that city. I don't know if you can handle it, man. That one might take you out. It's hot down there. It's real hot. But even if it's just a day, I think it'd be cool to just say, "Hey, I went to Miami. I've been there." That'd be cool. So the last place on my list before I throw it back over to you, I have the Everglades National Park. This is something I really wanted to do when we were in Florida. Unfortunately, we just didn't get to make it down there. And if you're not familiar, Everglades is a national park located in the southern tip of Florida. It covers 1.5 million acres of land, so it's a huge, huge area. It's the largest wetland wilderness in the United States. And basically, it's swamps and marshes, and they're homes to very many different plant life and animal species. Of the various wildlife notable, you may be lucky enough to come across some endangered species, such as the Florida panther, hence the hockey team, manatees, and the American crocodile. Over 1 million people a year visit the Everglades of Florida. So sometimes I hit and miss on these from what I think you would like. Sometimes I throw them on there and you're like, no, actually, I have no interest in that. But I feel like on this one, I threw this on there. I feel like you'd be an Everglades guy, right?
Yeah, definitely. For
Okay,
sure, I
cool.
want to visit the Everglades. It's probably, I mean, Disney has to be number one, I think, but Everglades for sure. I got to go there if I visit Florida.
All right, cool, cool.
And like one of my favorite TikTok accounts. You already know who I'm about to say.
Yep, yep.
Fishing Garrett, dude, raw dogs, the Everglades. My guy is walking around barefoot at night in the Florida Everglades, catching wild animals. This
Swamp
dude's
puppies.
going, yeah, fucking around with crocodiles, touching crocodiles, calling them swamp puppies. He's catching. frogs, snakes. He's trying to catch a 20-foot python. That's his goal. And I'm just waiting on the day that that video pops up where he catches that 20-foot python.
Yeah, I'm
But I
rooting
love
for
his
him.
videos.
Rooting for him, and it's impossible to come across one on your TikTok and like not stay and watch the whole thing. It is definitely one of my favorite accounts. He actually just went to the Amazon too. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, he broadened his horizons.
Yeah. So yeah, the Everglades National Park would be my own personal number one next time I go to Florida. I have it in my top three, and if you're listening, never been, I would say it's highly recommended. So those are some interesting facts about Florida, some places to see. Dakota, let me throw it over to you. Florida is pretty wild as far as murderers go. I know that the murder per capita necessarily might not be top 10, but nonetheless, Florida's pretty crazy. So I'm gonna let you take it away and tell us what we got.
Yeah, Florida is home of a lot of crazy shit. The saying Florida man, when there's just wild ass stories that people think are fake, but it's something that really happened in Florida. It was very hard to narrow it down, but some of the most famous crimes that ever happened have happened in the state. The murder of Kaylee Anthony, everyone knows that story.
Yeah. Yep.
Wild documentary that just came out last year. She definitely did it, but now I think her dad was involved after watching that documentary.
Yeah, I see. I watched it and I'm more so I left thinking that maybe she didn't do it.
What?
I don't know. I feel like it was her dad. I
What?
don't know. I feel like her dad had a lot to do with it. So, regardless, my question for you, because we kind of got into a debate this at home, it's not really accurate anymore, but it's said that you are innocent until proven guilty. Obviously, she's guilty in some shape or form. In the court of her peers, she was found innocent, and I feel like she's always going to be dragged for it for the rest of her life. I mean, what's your take on that? You think that you think that's fair? You think that she should be kind of left alone since she was technically found innocent in the court of law? Or I mean, where do you stand on that?
No, no, no.
Piece of
I
shit.
100% I think she did it. I
Okay.
have no clue how a jury can decide that she was innocent. That documentary was from her point of view to help her case, but it did not help at all. That's how guilty she is that did not help her at all. It just also pinned the murder on other people. I think I didn't think her dad was involved before because I heard stories of like her blaming him and all that. I think he was somehow involved, but I think she killed him or she killed Kaylee and the dad helped cover it up a little bit.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, maybe I worded that wrong. I mean, she definitely was involved, but it was like she was just dead ass throwing everyone else under the bus throughout the whole thing. So I mean,
Of course, I
kind of
mean,
just taking people down with her,
she's
but
not going to get on there and say that she did it. I
yeah,
don't know what people expected out of the documentary, but
it was definitely a interesting case, a huge case, and do want to say shout out to whoever her lawyer was. I mean, to actually get her to be found innocent. I mean, dude must be good at what he does. So, all right, yeah. So we had the Anthony case. What else we got down there?
uh, I know we mentioned him plenty of times before, but Ted Bundy, his final victims were in the state of Florida. Some Florida State University students. He was executed in Florida, so that was the final place of him.
Okay, was
The
Florida
most
the?
famous serial killer ever, or famous female serial killer ever, Aileen Wuornos. I'm sure you've heard of her.
Yep,
There's a movie. Who
pretty
plays
sure on
her?
Netflix.
Charlize Theron plays her in a Netflix movie. So it was hard to narrow down, but I got a list of three I'm gonna throw at you.
Okay, we got three more. All right, yeah. Go ahead and kick us
First of
off.
all, Otis Toole, not too famous of a name, but his victim was very famous. 6-year-old Adam Walsh was abducted from a Sears inside of a mall and was found dead 2 weeks later. This murder pushed for a lot of change in the state of Florida and the country as Adam's parents went on to found the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. His father, John Walsh, was a host for a TV show, as you know, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, America's Most Wanted. and he was responsible for helping capture a lot of the most dangerous criminals that there have been in the country.
Okay, that's a yeah, interesting start. I know that it was a unfortunate event, but it I guess you could say it did lead to some sort of positives in the organization that it led to. So okay.
Definitely, it's not often that parents of a murdered child have that much impact on a society, but they've definitely done a lot. Moving on, got a guy also known as the Gainesville Ripper. Danny Rolling was one of the most brutal serial killers in Florida history. Five of his victims were claimed over a 4 day period in August of 1990. He was captured after a robbery, and his DNA was then matched to the scene of those murders. He was also found to have killed three other people in Louisiana a year prior. The way he killed his victims was what made his crime so memorable. He'd break into the women's houses, tie them up, stab them to death, and then he would skin them and pose with their dead bodies.
Oh, okay. So it's almost like some what's that movie? Silence of the Lambs, right?
Yeah, or Texas Chainsaw, skinning them.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Yep. And my last one, this one's pretty wild. So I mentioned in a previous episode about a killer mom who killed five of her kids over a period of time, and it was one of the craziest cases that I've ever heard of because it took five deaths for suspicion to raise. Now this one is even worse. Christine Falling claimed the lives of five kids and one elderly person before she was caught. She started her spree at 17 years old when she took a babysitting job. She killed a 2 year old who said she said they fell out of the crib. Then a couple months later, she killed a 4 year old. And then 3 days later, during that 4 year old's funeral, she babysat the kid's cousin, and they end up dead too. So we have three bodies right there. That should raise suspicion. Two kids in one family being killed under someone's watch. It didn't stop there. So next was the elderly person. She was in charge of caring for a 77-year-old. And the same day that she started caring for her, that person died. But that wasn't it. Her final two victims were her own nieces, who she'd been left with a couple months, or only for a couple minutes, and then a 10-year or 10-week old kid. So in the end, she killed six people before she was caught. That's just absolutely wild to me.
Yeah, that one's crazy. I almost have to say that's not even on Christine. That's on the families who are like, "Hey, could you babysit for us this weekend?" Because accidents happen, but if I had a child, I don't know if I would necessarily ask someone who, had an accidental death on their hands. But nonetheless, if you have more than one accidental death on your hands, I almost feel like that's on you for even asking this person to watch over your child. That's insane. Also, kind of crazy
Yeah.
that the police like never really. Again, I get one accident can happen, but the fact that she had multiple deaths on her hands and they were just like, "Oh, dang, accident."
And you know what's crazy to me is, well, this happened in the 80s.
Okay.
So it's not like it was super old. Her niece, like, why would you, as her sister, why would you leave your daughter alone with someone who has been responsible or caretaking for a bunch of kids that have been killed?
Yeah, like what, four
And
bodies at that point?
yeah, so
Hey,
it was the
watch my
two of
kid.
them, and the kid was in the back seat. The mom went in the store only a couple minutes. She went in, grabbed something, came out, kid was dead. And that
Yeah, I
wasn't even
don't.
the last one. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, she's dumb for leaving the kid alone with her, but I mean, come on.
Hey, I don't
Bunch
care
of
how much.
dumbasses here.
I don't care how much I love my own sister. If she's got four bodies on her hand, I'm probably not gonna let her watch my child. So that's wild. That whole thing's pretty crazy. Very interesting. Okay, so that is some notable murders as well as you mentioned a couple of famous murders at the top of that right there. So yeah, Florida murder per capita not too crazy, but as far as stories themselves go, and like you said, the old Florida man stories, pretty wild state. All right, so let's get into this week's case.
Richard Smith was a 49-year-old IT specialist that did work in crypto for the Department of Homeland Security. What he did was pretty important work, so when he stopped showing up for work, it raised some suspicion. July 31st, 2015 marked the third consecutive day that Richard had not shown up to work with no call or email. This is when his supervisors reached out to local police to do a welfare check and see where he had been. Richard lived in a house with his 77-year-old mother, Vansale, and his 47-year-old brother, John. Vansale was retired and spent her times caring for her sons and watching TV, while John had been an employee of Walmart for the past 20 years.
When police arrived to the house, there was no signs of anyone on the property from the outside, and without a warrant, they were forced to reach out to a family member to get permission to enter the residence. Living nearby was Donald Harton, Von Seal's firstborn son and half brother of Richard and John. He granted police permission to enter the home to perform their welfare check. What they found was unlike any other crime scene they had ever seen before.
The bodies of all three victims were discovered throughout the house, but they were covered in blankets and sheets. Right away, detectives believed that there was something more than a simple homicide here. The method of covering up victims is a practice that can be traced back to certain types of witchcraft in an attempt to keep bodies warm, similar to the Heaven Gates case. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for anyone who hasn't, some crazy people that were really into religion, they were also into UFOs. They decided that they all wanted to commit mass suicide, kind of like a Jonestown thing, but they willingly did it. 39 people, they drank something, killed themselves. Someone covered them up to keep their bodies warm. And then it went on until all 39 people were dead. And then their belief was their spirits will be taken to Heaven's Gate on the UFO, some weird shit. All right,
Okay.
anyways, back to our story. After determining the bodies have been there for 3 days, a quick internet search was able to show that the date had been the night of a blue moon. A blue moon is a phenomenon where the moon appears to be blue, and it happens to be the second full moon of each month. This is significant because blue moon is used by pagan and Wiccan followers to guide rituals that are used to recharge and cleanse, which I wanted to get into a little something we wouldn't normally do, but
Okay. What do we got?
some witchcraft.
Oh, nice. Okay. Some witchcraft. I like that.
Yeah, so before we begin, you want to set an intention for the ritual, whether it's spiritual guidance, positive vibrations,
Oh,
or manifesting a personal dream.
positive vibes. Okay.
Yeah, you want some posy vibes in here. So you're going to get 5 ingredients: a bowl, some water, an Empress tarot card, iris flowers, or replaced with any blue flowers, and a hand towel. Now, the water is the element of cleansing and healing. The Empress card, it stands for, I'm not all into this shit, but it's one of the major cards in the tarot deck. Stands for the god, a goddess.
Okay.
She can be called upon for balance, guidance, and self love. And then the iris is a sacred flower of the rainbow goddess Iris, and she delivers messages using a rainbow. You know. Anyways, so you got your 5 things, and then there's 5 steps that you want to do. So you want to sit in a quiet space. Make sure you're not going to be disturbed, and you need to be in a place where the moon can be seen.
Ooh, okay.
Secondly, you'll pour the water into a bowl, situate the bowl so that you're able to see the reflection of the moon in the water. Third, you want to place that Empress tarot card in front of the bowl. Around the bowl, you want to then place the iris flowers. Take a few deep breaths as you let the energy of the moon to recharge the water and yourself. Meditate or follow the guided meditation, and then use a journaling worksheet that is included in this spell. I'm new to this shit. Sorry. Place your hands in the water, and then you'll feel the energy from the moon soak into your body. And then you'll use this moment to connect with the divine energy of the moon. The
Okay.
last step, when you gathered enough energy, you'll remove your hands from the water and then use the towel to dry your hands.
All right. Our guy's just starting to dip his toe in the whole witchcraft thing, but that was pretty good. All right. I feel like you laid that out uh pretty solidly. Shoot, maybe someone listening might dabble, try to influence some
Yeah, I can get
positive
you
vibes.
the real link so you can follow it all to a T.
Dakota's gonna test this out as himself this weekend, and he'll let you know how that goes for real. All right, so investigators took the belief that the murders have been linked to witchcraft, and they started asking questions to the local Wiccan groups. The leader of the area's Wiccans denied any involvement in the murders, but it was still believed to be ritualistic. So then the murders were coined as the BlueMoon Murders in a press conference. The nature of the case took itself from a local headline to national news. At first, there was a belief that maybe Richard's line of work had got him involved in some shady business. Working for a government agency in a prominent field definitely could bring you this type of problem. However, this lead went nowhere and was quickly dismissed.
There were no suspects in the case, so investigators brought back in Don Harton, the half brother of Richard and John, for some questioning, hoping to answer some questions about the family. This is where they made a shocking discovery. Donald was a practicer of Wiccan rituals. This
Hmm,
whole time they were looking for someone to fit the description, and a member of the family was part of it.
what a coincidence.
So then a search warrant was obtained for Donald's house, where they found a room that was dedicated to prayer, contained books about witchcraft. There was even a pentagram drawn on the floor. You know from the movies that's when shit gets real when the pentagram's on
Right,
the
right.
floor.
That's when things go wrong. That's when they take a bad turn. When you see that pentagram.
Despite all of this, there was no actual evidence connecting him to the murders. So while he remained a suspect, the police dove into his background a little more.
Family members of Richard and John painted a picture of Donald as a mean person. As kids, he would find a weakness in them and pick on them. He was also known to struggle financially and often seek financial assistance from his mother. This led to jealousy with Richard and his successful career. Bonseal was found to have an estate of close to $1 million, but Donald was not in her will. It would all be split between the brothers. This would give a motive between this would give a motive because with them dead, also, he would then be the sole heir of the estate.
Detectives hoped that something would come back from DNA evidence collected that proved Donald's involvement. It turned out it did. Harton's DNA was found on cigarette butts that were found mixed in with paper towels that were covered in Von Seal's blood. So 3 months after the murder took place, Donald Harton was arrested for triple homicide. He was then found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without a chance of parole. This, however, did take 5 years to come up with a conviction, which was strange that it took so long.
The reason for that was because it ended up going to trial because of all the evidence being circumstantial. This was until a letter from Donald's cellmate came across investigators' desks before the trial. It claimed Donald admitted to the murders and had a specific detail to back this claim. The bodies were covered to throw off investigators so they couldn't tell how long the bodies had been there. Also mentioned was the missing fingertip of Von Seal that Donald said he had used to open her safe. This threw out any belief of ritualistic murders, and they were able to determine it was, in fact, for financial gain.
Now, as I've been doing last couple episodes, I want to get into more of the gory shit, you
Here
know.
we go. Let's get it. Let's get into it. Okay.
So our night is going to start out. It was 3 days before the bodies were discovered. Donald was cooking dinner for his mother and his two brothers. Little family outing thing.
Yeah. Well, nice dinner.
And then after dinner is when it all went downhill. It's unknown the order of the victims, but all three of them were beaten with claw hammers to the head. So I beat them to death with the hammers, and then he ended up slitting all their throats. But then Richard was also found to be shot in the head, seeming like he was we mentioned earlier that he might have been jealous of Richard's career. So to add insult, he already killed him and then he just shot him in the head. Also, not known and never even realized until that cellmate letter was the whereabouts of Unseal's fingertip. It's actually now believed that Donald tortured her prior to killing her in an attempt to open the safe, where he just took matters into his own hands and cut her finger off.
Wow. Okay, so we have a hammer claw, then an old throat slit, and then a gunshot. I think that's what they classify as overkill. It's pretty
Yeah, the
deep.
uh the shot to the head was, I mean, I don't even know if the throat cuts were or cut throats were necessary, but the shot to the head was just, that was personal.
Yeah, I feel like we've had a few cases now where the motive just made absolutely no sense whatsoever. No real reason for the murder. I For our guy Donald, I will say, not worth killing, but his mom's got over $1 million to her name, and everyone except him was included in the will. I gotta say, that was definitely a reason to be a little bit upset. I could agree with the mom being a little bit upset with that. I'd be a little thrown off by that one. I don't ever want to say it's a legit reason, but I mean, at least there's somewhat of an understanding as far as being
Should have
upset.
left his ass out of the will.
Yeah, I wonder why that is. I mean, I know they said that he was listed as mean and kind of picked on other people, but I'm wondering if that's the sole reason why he was left out of the will,
Well,
possibly.
all the people that know that answer are dead, so I don't think we're
Yeah,
gonna figure that one out.
guess we'll never know. That was this week's murder case. We have the Blue Moon Murders, the Blue Moon Murders in the Sunshine State. Pretty interesting. Dakota, this week we covered the state of Florida, some things to do, some places to see, some very interesting murders, notable murderers in the state. So I'm gonna throw it back to you. I wanted to know what's your personal take on the state. Is this a place you'd like to see someday? And then ultimately, let's go ahead and know where you put Florida on your list, 1 to 49.
Yeah, I think there's a lot in Florida that I would like to visit. Would you mention three things? I for sure would like to visit two of them. Disney. Want to go to Animal Kingdom. Since Disney purchased the rights to Star Wars, they have a full Star Wars thing there, Galaxy's Edge.
Okay.
I want to go there, be a nerd, create my own lightsaber. Even though I already have a couple, I want to create my own.
Okay.
So that's definitely up there on my bucket list to go Galaxy's Edge. Everglades definitely up there. So those two right there are some things I do want to visit. Universal Studios. There's a lot in Florida. So as you can imagine, this is gonna be a higher ranking. Um, I'm gonna put Florida at number five,
Wow. We got a
top
top
five.
five state this week. Okay. Top five. That feels good. I'm glad to see us get a top five state up there. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Again, it wasn't a very long time, but we were there it was a extended weekend, but from the time I was there, absolutely love Florida. Really good time, and I would definitely go back again. I'd definitely recommend the state for sure. It was a great time. My guy, I am going to be out of town this time next week. I'm going to be going to Colorado, which was number one on your states. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be my first time heading out there.
Going
Um,
to my number one bucket list place.
I'm
So
heading to
that
your number one
is
state.
salty.
I'm looking forward to coming back and reporting the trip, the adventure, and how it went down. I'm gonna try my best to potentially maybe throw a little TikTok together out there for our listeners. I'll throw it up there once I get back home. And like I said, maybe we can figure out a little mini sode to get into these next few days before I leave so we can have something to drop next week. But all that being said, as we begin our departure from the state of Florida, in conclusion of episode 18 of 50 States, 50 Murders, we want to continue to thank you, the listener, for tuning in each and every week while we continue to cover a new state as well as a murder case that happened to take place there.
If you have not already, please be sure to follow and subscribe and tune in next week for a little mini-sode.